funny how in a roundabout way, you look at the final score and it does look like it looks like, at least on paper, every other non-conference game Michigan played last year. And that's not to say that that is telling that this team will go undefeated, win a national title. But, there is a little bit of shaking off game rep rust. Some of these guys have, you've been going at your teammates for a couple months here now, spring ball, fall camp. And once you get, it's just different when you get out there. And I think we saw that with a lot of those guys. I think that, again, I agree with you, Chris. You look at a lot of the issues that the offensive line had, or a lot of the issues that John Jansen said the offensive line had. It's coachable stuff. It's correctable. Now, I wonder if, last season they start Miles Hinton at left tackle, and it wasn't really going great those first couple weeks, and you're like, all right, they're going to have to make a change here. They're going to have to make a change here. I wonder if the center position will kind of be that version of that this year. Would like to see a little bit more of stability there because, again, that is a position that has chain reactions throughout the rest of the offensive line. But, overall, like I said, it's hard to disagree with Sherrone more. There's a lot. This is a football team that can play better. I don't think it's a team that's not capable. I don't think it's a team that's as good as last year's team was. But, it's clear that a lot of things that they experienced was simply it's just a different level of competition, even if you're playing a team that maybe has lesser talent than the unit you practice against every day. So any other thoughts from Sherrone Moore or other things that need to clean up from this game on Saturday?
No, I thought special teams and defense were exactly what we thought they would be. Dominic Zvada, we wrote that, hey, he's going to have to make some field goals from 50 plus probably with this. And he did that. It was unbelievable. Think about how key that was, guys. If he misses any of those, it's a completely different game. They're getting the ball near mid, 40-yard line or whatever it is, and Michigan's 3 points down. It's 3 points less. So how critical that was and what a pickup he was. So I maintained that they needed to go and get another quarterback in the portal. And, I understand that the options were limited. I think part of their quarterback issues can be traced to slow NIL progress from the last few years. And you're looking at, for example, look at what Texas's backup is making, Arch Manning. It's unbelievable compared to, what guys are getting at Michigan. And it was hard. So, and you didn't know if JJ was coming back, even though we kind of figured after they won it all and made the playoff that he wasn't coming back. So regardless, Davis Warren is who you've got. And all the talk, guys, that he doesn't have the arm strength and this and that is bullshit. The guy can make all the throws. And, he underthrew the one pass, throwing it off his back foot, but he had some other really nice throws. They're going to have to trust him a little bit more, in my opinion, against Texas, because that's not going to be a 10-7 game, in my opinion. I think that Texas is going to score a few more points, and they're going to have to trust their quarterback a little bit more. And let's see what Kirk Campbell has, fellas, in the bag. You can only do what your personnel allows you to do. How many times have we schemed on PlayStation or whatever on Madden back in the day? I'm going to use the worst team and I'm going to scheme a great game against the team with much more speed and so on and so forth. It doesn't work that way. Guys are going to have to make plays out there.
You mean it's not like the video games? Because I'm winning some games, like Texas Tech beating Georgia and stuff like that in the college football video game. It's probably not going to happen in real life, but you're right. And I think Kirk Campbell will have a much more creative game plan for this week. Some things that they've been preparing for a while. Listening to Steve Sarkisian today, somebody asked, have you been preparing for Michigan for months? And he said, well, the players probably didn't know it, but a lot of the plays we're about to show them today are ones that we were repping in training camp. And Kirk Campbell and Sherrone Moore will do the same exact thing. Kirk Campbell told us that on our podcast when he came on back in July, when he said that, you always prepare more for the Penn States, the Michigan States, of course, Ohio State. So, I think that they wanted to get Davis Warren's feet wet. I think they wanted to, get the offensive line out there. They're, like you said, Anthony, they're still figuring out what the center position is going to look like. I mean, I think that could be something that gets determined this week in practice or maybe in the following weeks, similar to what they did last year with some shuffling early on in the season. So you still have some things you're working out there, but I certainly need to get more guys involved, like a Samaj Morgan. I love the end around early. I think we'll see more, things like that in this game. Donovan Edwards, use him in different ways. But Dominic Zavada had at one point when Michigan was up 16-10, he had 10 of their 16 points. You don't want that to be the case. As much as it was insanely fun to watch him just drill those kicks with ease, and how funny it was listening to him after the game. He just seems like a super good, low-key kid. And then it's like, man, this guy's like a killer on the field with that leg. But you don't want to have to rely on that in these big games. You can't rely on that if you want to win these big games. And I think Michigan knows that. And but interesting too, like the Alex Orji, Davis Warren rotation, how that's going to work, how they're going to be able to stay in rhythm. Hopefully, if you're Michigan, with those guys shuffling in and out, will be something to watch. Because it's hard to do and pull off really well. Even when it was Cade and JJ, there was some times where JJ would come in, run, and the next thing you know, Cade's got a 3rd and long that he's got to clean up. So same thing happened to Davis Warren a couple times on Saturday. So that's going to be interesting to see how they play with that.
Yeah, I think maybe the final takeaways for me is I think Davis Warren can be what Jake Rudock was. He can be what Wilton Spate was for this team. I think he has the chance to be a steady guy that runs the offense, moves the chains, leads this team to scoring drives. I mean, it's pretty clear, like, even in the few reps that we did see Alex Orji throwing the ball, like, you can see why Davis Warren, I see what they see, I guess is the best way to put it. I can see why he was the best guy for the job, the guy that won the job. Again, it's going to be so much this week about, one, getting him in rhythm, and the game's got to slow down a little bit for him too. I think some of that certainly can be improved by more playing time, more reps against a really good defense that they'll see this weekend. I want to park in the Kalel Mullings, Donovan Edwards conversation for a second, only because, to me, it's been apparent from the jump. This was going to be a backfield timeshare. I think there are a lot of people that maybe didn't pay as much close attention this offseason that were kind of surprised by how the carries shook out last week, and also maybe not surprised to see that Donovan Edwards, it was kind of a performance that looked a lot like it did last year. Now, in the vacuum of one game, we'll see what happens this week. The Don typically has a way of paying back, lesser games with interest in big moments. And there's certainly, if they have a prayer in the world to win this game on Saturday, he's going to have to be a big part of that, I think. But I'll say it wasn't something that happened in the vacuum of one game, in that we keep seeing the Michigan staff, and now it's 2 coaching staffs, even though it's sort of the same offensive brain trust, trying to run this guy between the tackles. And I think Donovan Edwards is a guy that, we talk about needing to get the wide receivers more involved. You talk about wanting to see more of what Samaj Morgan can do, on the jet sweeps and the things like that. They have to find a way to get this guy the football with nothing but green grass in front of him, whether it's off tackle, whether it's as a 3rd down back, because this isn't, when Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins were in the same backfield, you were fairly confident, and maybe a little less so, or people forget how much better Blake Corum got between the tackles and putting on the weight needed and all that, those sort of things. But, it's pretty clear to me that if they're going to run between the tackles, it has to be Kalel Mullings. And if they need a second guy that can do that, it might not be Donovan Edwards. We might need to see a little more Ben Hall, maybe mix some Jordan Marshall in there as well. I just think that this staff, for a couple of years now, has kind of tried to turn a Ferrari into a snowplow. And I think I'd like to see him, used a little more on, as a 3rd down guy, or a guy that, gets off tackle and kind of cuts up the field. That's not working for me. And I don't think that that's something that's good for his confidence, to keep doing something that really for the past few years he hasn't shown a propensity to be able to do.
Was it his freshman year at Maryland when he caught 10 passes for 150 yards or something like that? And you can do that with him. You can do things like that with him. We were talking about him as a Marshall Faulk type back then. And I think that's where he's at his best. So again, if you put him out there with Kalel Mullings, you still have a great football player out there, right? Is he one of the best 11? Absolutely, but not in the role that they're trying to play him, is my argument here. But the good news is that they weren't that stubborn with it on Saturday, right? It's not like they said, okay, we're going to just keep doing this because of Donovan's earned it or whatever, and he's our captain. They went to Kalel Mullings because he was their best chance to win. And I think that is going to be the case here going forward. This guy, is a Big Ten back. I think it's SoCal for Mish on the message boards who was all aboard the Kalel train, and he was absolutely right. And to be fair, Sherrone Moore said at Big Ten Media Days, he said, this is a guy that not enough people are talking about. This is a very good football player. We're going to see it this fall. So I want to see more of him. I think he's got better vision. I think he's got more power. Donovan goes down too easily sometimes, and, that's not necessarily his fault. It just is who he is. Kalel Mullings, man, you can't bring this guy down. He's got that lower body strength and is just built for the Big Ten. So let's see more of that. And if you want to, run some reverses with Donovan, put him in the slot, throw to him out of the backfield a little bit more, I'm all for that. I'm not saying take him off the field. I'm just saying use him a little differently. I couldn't agree with you more, Anthony.
I'm not all that worried about what they're going to do with the running backs, because I do feel like they used Kalel Mullings when they needed to, when he was the hot hand. I think there are going to be other times when Donovan Edwards is the hot hand. And I thought Donovan ran fairly well in the second half. I thought the start of the game wasn't as good. But even Sherrone Moore pointed out today, he had that 9-yard run that got called back. It still, it was a 9-yard run. Like, it wasn't called back because of that. So he did some good things. And, but Kalel Mullings certainly had the hot hand in that last drive when they got things going. And as he kept saying, he was throwing those gut punches throughout the game. And sure enough, it sounds like a cliche sometimes when you hear Sherrone Moore or Jim Harbaugh say this, but the 4 or 5 yard runs turn into 21, like we saw with Kalel Mullings, and then 15. And then it was a big, a 6-yard run after that. And then guess what that leads to? An 18-yard play action pass from Davis Warren to Colston Loveland. So, when Kalel Mullings has it going like that, they're going to feed him. When it's Donovan Edwards, they're going to feed him. And by the way, Donovan Edwards is outstanding in big games. His yards per carry against top 10 teams in 4 or 5 games throughout his career is unbelievable. The amount of long touchdown runs he's ripped off. So I'm not counting the Don out after one game, and certainly think this could be a big weekend for him.